certainly we are aware that there are consequences to being helpers in this climate, right? But that can't stop us from being helpers. That can't stop any of us from moving forward and trying to help, right? You'll always come up against obstacles. But I really feel like it's the role of people when you have this relationship with plants, it is a privilege.
Herbal Radio is brought to you by Mountain Rose Herbs. Mountain Rose Herbs is committed to putting people, plants, and planet before profit. They work hand in hand with farm partners to provide the highest quality organic herbs, spices, extracts, teas, essential oils, and DIY ingredients. Mountain Rose Herbs is proud to be independently owned and operated here in Eugene, Oregon. Please visit mountainroseherbs.com for all your wellness needs. And now, on with the show.
Hi everyone, welcome to Tea Talks with Jiling, where we share tea and conversations with visionary herbalists connecting people, plants, and planet. I'm Jiling, your host, acupuncturist and herbalist in Southern California. Please enjoy today's Tea Talk with Linda and Luke Black Elk, who are food sovereignty activists and teachers of traditional plant use, gardening, food preservation, and foraging. They are currently based in the Twin Cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul and spend their time collecting and preparing traditional foods and medicines for communities in North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, and beyond. So this is a stressful time for lots of people in Minneapolis and around the country, and Linda and Luke are showing up with plant medicine and neighborly care to help folks stay grounded and nourished. We're going to chat about specific herbal allies and actions they're coordinating to support their community right now, and how you, dear listener, can support their work from wherever you are listening. I am so pleased and delighted to welcome here with us today, Linda and Luke Black Elk. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having us. We are so excited and honored to be here.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So as an introduction, will you share a little bit about your journey into herbalism or food as medicine, and who were some of the important people, plants, places, or experiences that brought you into this beautiful world?
I think both of us just kind of grew up in this world of plants. Our families were both plant people. And so, one of our first foods was wild onions, two different types of wild onions in different areas, but both wild onions, right? And then it just grew from that into where we're at now.
Yep. We did both grow up harvesting. We grew up with our families going out to harvest all kinds of beautiful, amazing plants for food and medicine. And very often the line being blurry between those in our lives. Both of our families, when someone in the family is sick, there are certain foods that we all turn to, like many families out there, certain herbs that we turn to that we start incorporating into our diets. Both of us, like our moms, were very formative in encouraging that. And then our grandparents as well. It's just been, that intergenerational knowledge that's been passed down.
Nice. That's so sweet when you get to learn from the family traditions like that. And I love seeing herbal couples. So it's really sweet that I get to have both of you on air with us today. I know there's a lot happening in your neighborhood right now, and thank you so much for holding space for so many people. Can you paint a picture of what's it like over there right now, and how does plants and community come into play?
It's really about bringing our plant relatives who are good at handling trauma to the fore. We have a lot of people who are using a lot of mint and things like that because we have chemicals in the air. We're having a lot of skin irritation, so we're doing a lot of salves and like washes to get rid of chemicals. And a lot of it is so for a lot of like the local herbalists, it's about discovering new things, like the fact that plants can help with uh, reducing chemical reactions and with the aftercare.
Yeah, so we do have a lot of people around the city who have had burns from chemical irritants, tear gas and pepper spray, in need of really good care around those wounds and injuries. A lot of people, who might be running and falling on ice, literal ice. um, and maybe they slip and fall and need a poultice. Things like that. We're seeing a lot of that. So Minneapolis. I have to say, we've lived here now for going on 3 years, and boy, this city, they really know what they're doing. They've been through a lot in the past decade, certainly. And even before that. But this community is so beautifully organized and, just coming together, regardless of political party. This is all about community coming together to take care of each other. And we're so honored to be a part of that and see that the Indigenous community here has been extremely active in helping their friends and relatives who are from south of the border. We have a lot of people going out, people with families who are extremely busy, who go out every day to purchase groceries for a local family and then deliver that to those families. We have people who are giving their neighbors rides to work because it's just not possible for those folks to take the bus or even stand at a bus stop right now. The streets of Minneapolis are much emptier than they usually are. There's usually people, it's so beautiful because there's people and music and laughter and families walking up and down the streets normally. And right now, a lot of people are scared to be out of their homes. So, we have some families who have not left their house since the end of December, since New Year's. And so they literally haven't left. And so we even have, we've formed laundry brigades to go pick up people's laundry, take them to the laundromat and, do laundry for families. It's things like that, but we're doing it. Like we're organizing those things and making it happen. As far as herbal care goes, there's whole teams of herbalists coming together to talk about, hey, what are you using for particular injuries, or what are you using for the massive trauma that so many people and families are facing, families and individuals. What kinds of tea are you using for people who are in extremely stressful situations? So, yeah, we've been seeing a lot of, nervine herbs, a lot of calming herbs, a lot of chamomile, and we really love pineapple weed because it's sort of the indigenous version of chamomile. Here in the cities, people really love that. We've been seeing a lot of oats and milky oats. We've been seeing and utilizing a lot of blue vervain, which amazing, and people around here really love it. That's another thing that we're noticing is that people really want native, like local native herbs as much as possible, which has been really interesting. But that's not all. We've been seeing a lot of lemon balm as well and requests for that. But this is different than other times, right? Like Luke and I worked during the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. We worked during George Floyd. We worked, during the fight against the Dakota Access Pipeline on the Standing Rock Reservation, and we've been working with plants that whole time. And this is different. We've been, like I said, getting lots of requests for chemical irritant herbs for chemical irritants, but we get a lot of requests for you know, like, is there a powder mix that I can quickly put into a smoothie that's going to help me stay calm? Like things like that. People are really now talking about, what can I use on the go? What can I use quick? What can I have on me in case I get sprayed by pepper spray? Yeah, it's very interesting time.
Yeah. So it sounds like there's this big community organizing effort in which folks are self-organizing, and it's like it's not something that was previously established, but is something that is organically emerging to fit the needs of the moment.
Yes, exactly. And some of our herbalist friends who are from, the Northeast and the Northwest and even overseas, they've all been contacting their friends out here and saying, hey, contact Luke and Linda Black Elk, or contact there's tons of people, not just us, who are doing amazing work out here. And so, it's interesting because it's all coming together to where we're in one network now. And, we all have, group conversations and phone calls and text messages and email threads. But we're all coming together and organizing around this.
And you mentioned with the chemical irritants, with the tear gas and the pepper spray, what have been some of the herbal relatives that have been helpful in ameliorating the painful discomfort that comes from that?
So a lot of demulcent herbs, a lot of things that, I think people perceive as being mucilaginous when they're cooked down, those have been incredible. So marshmallow, a lot of linden, just trying to think. Oh, I mean, we have had requests for aloe, like fresh aloe and aloe juice from a lot of people. We've even had people using store-bought nopales, store-bought prickly pear cactus pads, just as a very cooling, non-irritating poultice on the skin. So, lots of cooling demulcent herbs.
Yeah. And what have been some of the herbal combinations you mentioned for these on-the-go remedies that folks are asking for, particularly for, it sounds like, helping with the stress, supporting the stress response? What are some commonly used formulas, if any?
Yeah, yep, absolutely. So we've had a lot of people very interested in green powders, in particular anti-inflammatory green powders. I think probably a lot of your listeners, sometimes you feel like you're preaching to the choir, but I think a lot of us are aware that stress causes inflammation, right? It leads to inflammation. So we've been getting a lot of requests for anti-inflammatory green powders. So lots of nettles, but we put powdered turmeric in there as well. Thinking about like anti-inflammatory stuff. A lot of hawthorn. We've been utilizing a lot of hawthorn leaf, flower, and berry.
Mushroom powder mixes.
Yeah, lots and lots of mushroom powder mixes. So lots of lion's mane and reishi and turkey tail mixes that people can put into their smoothies and even into their coffee as they're marching, putting scoops of mushroom powder into their coffee while they march, just to as an anti-inflammatory. But we actually have had quite a number of injuries that really when you have anti-inflammatory herbs and mushrooms, it really helps.
And it's been cold over there too.
Oh my gosh. We've been using a lot of warming salves, even salves with like cayenne and things like that in them. A lot of evening primrose oil to help with circulation, because
arnica.
A lot of arnica, because we do have a lot of bruises and bumps from falling on the ice or from ice. And so we've been utilizing a lot of that as well, but it has been so cold. Minnesotans are a very hardy bunch of folks, and they have been out, by the thousands, even when it was 25 below actual temperature I wasn't even the wind chill.
Been doing a lot of like coniferous teas, so like cedar teas, white pine teas, for like juniper, a lot of things that are opening up the bronchial passages.
Yeah, we definitely lung support has been a very big deal. We've even had, because there's been chemical weapons release in neighborhoods that has wafted into homes, and so we've been working with a lot of families in neighborhoods who have needed that kind of support as well.
And how about prophylactic medicine, like the food as medicine, and that teaching or learning piece about how things that we can do in our day-to-day lives for folks who are hunkering down at home, or for the folks who are preparing to go out on a march like in a week or so?
Yep. So we've actually been making sort of broth blends, like powdered broth blends. So we include bone broth powder with a lot of powdered herbs. And so, just things that are going to be antiviral, that are going to be really good for keeping the lungs healthy, that are going to be anti-inflammatory and anti-stress. So bone broth powder with nettle powder with, the usual beautiful antivirals that are delicious as well. So oregano, rosemary, thyme. We've been putting in a lot of spice bush powder, which is delicious, but also, really great for the lungs and so warming.
Monarda powder.
Yeah, Monarda. We've been powdering up a lot of Monarda to include, and that's wonderful, especially for the lungs. And it's such a great antimicrobial too. So really helping to prevent infections. That bone broth powder with the herbal powders has been like our number one most requested item, because people will just put hot water and then put the packet into their mug, and they'll walk around drinking that. And, they say, I don't even get hungry, so I don't have to stop to eat. We have a lot of people who are patrolling. So they'll stand on street corners for hours a day looking for conflict from ICE usually. And just to watch out for your neighbors. And they will be on cold street corners for hours and hours. So they've really been loving nice hot tea and hot broth.
That's really amazing. I love with these herbal combinations that you're talking about, there's familiar herbs that you can find across most places of the country, like nettles. There's these kitchen herbs that you're talking about, like oregano and rosemary. And then there's hyper local specific herbs also, like the spice bush, and Monarda doesn't grow that well out here in California. So I think of that as more of a your locale kind of place. So I love that combination. And I'm imagining the smell and the flavor of that broth. It's kind of like a little bit of a herbal steam also, to open up the orifices and feel calm.
Yes, absolutely. And sometimes, around here, especially, my husband is a tribal member, and we work with a lot of tribal members who really want cedar, like the thuja species in various blends. And so we've been even powdering cedar and putting that in with our spice blends. And not only does that really, it's very good for lungs and coughs, but it is very calming for especially for people who've grown up with it. Very, very calming as well. And it gives a beautiful citrusy flavor to a lot of our spice blends. So that's a really fun example of food as medicine from our perspective.
Wow, so beautiful. Miss that thuja.
Yes.
Yeah. So with this work that you're doing, when you're saying that people are contacting you, is it they're texting you, like they know you personally, or how are people reaching you or the other herbalists or other organizations providing this kind of care?
Yep. So, great question. Yeah, we do. So like, I'll just say our friend Seven Song, um, has put a lot of people in touch with me personally. And then they'll put me in touch with other people. My husband, Luke, is sort of a community coordinator for food and medicine relief locally and for local native nonprofits. So a lot of people have been contacting him. And then when it comes specifically to herbal support, he'll put them in touch with me often. A lot of people contact me through Facebook, like through social media, which has been great. And yeah, I think that under the circumstances, people reach out any way that they possibly can.
Yeah. And are there herbal street medics going out that you know of over there as well?
Lots. Minneapolis is a great place for that as well. There's beautiful collectives of street medics, and often there are at least a few herbal medics in with the street medic collectives. Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like the community coming together is a really inspiring part of the challenging difficulties that you're going through in your community.
No, it's a lot different. We've been in a lot of communities, and it takes a lot to build this. But to be in a big city like Minneapolis and have it feel like a small hometown where everyone is just looking out for each other, and sometimes you don't know the person on the corner who's on the lookout, but you all know that you're working towards the same goal, and it's just you see comrades everywhere, and it's really good to see.
Yep. And like we'll be driving around town and we'll see some of these people patrolling up and down the streets, and we'll offer them a very Minnesota thing to offer them a bar, like a little dessert bar. That's like sort of thing. But we've had all of these Minnesota grandmas making sort of Rice Krispie treats and all kinds of like fun some of them really try hard to utilize local ingredients. So we had someone make white chocolate blueberry bars the other day, and she was like, can you take these to the march with you and just hand them out to community, so we do that too. And we even take not bulk, but loose leaf tea blends to the marches and to hand out, and people really want those because it's so cold. They're like, I'm going to go home and make this tea and have it with my bar. But I mean, that's how fun it is. And it's really so fun. Here in Minnesota, they really try to keep a light heart about things, so, you see you're out there delivering medicines, to people who are carrying signs that, say funny Minnesota things like, oh, no Nazis.
No.
Please leave us alone.
Yeah.
So polite.
So polite. Very Minnesota nice, so we get to see a lot of that and really be in community with people that we never probably would have, had the opportunity to talk to. But we're all coming together, and everyone is interested in plant medicine, teas in particular. People are just crazy about them here. So.
Yeah. So when you're making teas for people for the marches, like, is it having a table somewhere and then people come and get it, or how does that distribution work?
Both. So we'll often just send out a couple of people. So sometimes it's Luke and myself, but sometimes it's other friends or coworkers of ours who will go out with, one of those big Cambro type things.
Yeah, we'll have hot tea stations.
We'll set up hot tea stations, maybe like at the memorial for Renee Good or at the memorial site for Alex Preddy. We'll set up a table with, hot tea and some snacks. And then, if we're walking around, we tend to hand out bottles of water or bottles of tea, or we hand out lots of little kits. So like a kit that might have a salve in it for the, dry, chapped skin. it might also have a beautiful poultice blend in there for irritated skin. It might have a tea blend in there that's really good for lungs, So we it might have a tincture in there. We've been using a lot of tinctures as well, which normally we don't work with a lot of alcohol-based tinctures. But in this case, there, we've gotten lots of requests for them. So we love things that are packaged like that we can hand out to community. Stuff that works very well together in a kit.
Yeah. Have you been getting donations from all over?
All over.
So we have a friend. So we don't have a good address to receive mail, but we have a friend who has a very nice home, and they have a very nice porch that takes packages very well. And we warn them. We're like, if you do this, there's going to be a lot of packages. They're like, oh, no, I got it. And about a weekend, they're like, there are a lot of packages. We're like, we told you. We told you.
And we tried to really, really warn her ahead of time and say, this is not a small gift that you're giving us. Like, the use of your address is a huge gift right now, especially right now when we do worry about, she's a white presenting person. And so she is much less at risk than a lot of people. But, we realized what a sacrifice that would be to her to utilize her address for mailing. And there have been days when she has filled her entire pickup truck with packages from one day in the mail. And that's actually, it's been fantastic for us though, because we've been able to take these kits out, and we've been able to include things like crampons for the bottoms of people's shoes in the kits, to take out to people. And it's been absolutely amazing. We've served hundreds and hundreds of community members with all of it.
Wow. I'm so happy to hear that. For listeners who want to get in on this party, what's the best place for them to start? And is there a list somewhere of resources that are needed and helpful?
So they can contact me on social media. If like Facebook or Instagram, they can also email me if they want to. It's just very simple, linda.black.elk@gmail.com. But if they somehow get a hold of my phone number from a friend, feel free to call or text me. And I'm not going to put that out on here, but yeah. So, there are lots of lists that local organizations have put out asking for donations. We're happy to sort of be a hub for that. And then we can deliver things to a lot of those hubs. So we might take things out to a local women's shelter. We might take items, directly to families. That's one of the nice things, is that we have a whole team of people who are willing to make these deliveries. And you have to be vetted in order to make deliveries. You have to be someone who is going to be very careful not to be followed and things like that. So, that's no small job either, but we have a whole team of people doing that.
Yeah. Wow. So I'll put the links for you in the show notes. And I feel like you've been speaking about this quite a bit as already. But I just want to step back a little bit and ask, what do you feel like is the role of the herbalist in times like these?
I remember during COVID, I'm just going to say this, and if you all want to take it out, you can, but I'm going to say this. So I remember during COVID, a friend of mine who's also a plant person, she said, just be careful, because remember, it was, the witches that they burned, at the stake, right? And there are certainly, we are aware that there are consequences to being helpers in this climate, right? But that can't stop us from being helpers. That can't stop any of us from moving forward and trying to help, right? You'll always come up against obstacles. But I really feel like it's the role of people when you have this relationship with plants. It is a privilege. You are because plants aren't going to come up to any of us and be like, "Hi, Bob." You are a voice for the plant world, for the plant nations, and that's a massive responsibility. And if you've been given the gift of knowing and understanding plants and being able to communicate with them, and being able to tell their stories, it's a massive responsibility. And I really see that as our role in the world, and throughout history, it's to serve sort of as a mediator, as a translator almost, between the plants and members of the community who have other gifts that don't necessarily have anything to do with plants. And so, it's a good time to be stepping up for them.
Yeah. So herbalists is helpers and translators between the plant world and the human world, and putting yourself out there as an advocate for plants and people.
And I think between the human world, or the common human world, and medical professionals, we're that first line before people. Especially now, people are having a lot of distrust for places where they have to sign things, or they're getting their picture taken and things like that. And so people are coming to us for a lot of things and getting healthier because of that. And then when people do need that further aftercare, we can make sure that they get that and help them through that. So we are, translating a lot of different things.
Yeah. So the role of a herbalist, I love that as like first level of healthcare response, as opposed to escalating to somewhere with white coats and papers to sign.
Exactly. Yeah, because we do, even though you have to sign stuff at doctors' offices usually, no matter what, and obviously they have doctor-patient confidentiality. But still, those are very intimidating situations, especially for people who are already vulnerable. And so we are that sort of first line of defense.
Yeah. So beautiful. Earlier, when you were mentioning the different herbs that you're working with, you mentioned cedar. And I was wondering, so you're collecting some of the medicine from your neighborhood, and some of the medicine is also coming from all over the place.
Absolutely. And there really is, I think, we talk often about the flavor of a place, the feeling of a place, but often about the flavor, right? Like, what does a place taste like? And Minnesota tastes like cedar. It's just such an important plant here, very important, especially for Native people. But I feel like most people really love cedar. People burn it. They do steams with it. They put it in tea. They put it in food. Cedar braised bison, by the way. Oh my gosh, mwah, chef's kiss. I think that utilizing local plants as much as possible is a really good positive thing. We've been using even a lot of goldenrod, like we were talking about Monarda,
Calendula.
Calendula is not local, but we've been utilizing a lot of calendula that has been grown here in Minnesota. People do plant it a lot. We've been utilizing a lot of the wild alliums as well that we collected. They're just so good for lowering blood pressure and opening up the lungs. So we've been utilizing a lot of those, a lot of onions, and there's a whole hill of garlic chives near where we live. And, we had collected a lot of them, and we're using a lot of those even for people. So they love the local.
For some reason, I'm thinking about Kung Fu Panda, because Chinese New Year is coming up, and it's like this small band of do-gooders that are coming together and bringing together the community, and they've all got their own unique skill set. And these are traditional skills that they're bringing to the people and getting rid of the dark underlord together. And
Yeah.
Yep. No, that's so real. And yeah, I think there's so much to that, especially very unassuming people, who you wouldn't normally think of as being defenders, are really standing up and, like you said, taking care of and defending people. So.
And not only that, it's really building community,
Yeah.
and everyone is finding their strengths and their what they bring to the group, and the fact that we can all work together to really make something happen,
yeah, with that community piece, how are different generations getting involved, like the youth and the elders? How are they being integrated into this?
Well, I mean, we couldn't do this without elders. Like, just this wouldn't be happening without the ones who came before us. And I mean, not just they're obviously providing advice, but just the care in there's a real temptation, I think, during times like this to how do I want to say, be mean. Be angry. I mean, it's okay to be angry, but I think being unkind maybe might be what I'm looking for. And elders remind us that,
being gruff.
Yeah, being letting it get to you, really, lots of depression going on right now. And I think that, our elders really help to keep us grounded.
I think that's one of the things we're really seeing in community is reminding each other to do self-care. And that's something that we're really finding is a lot of people aren't caring for themselves. They're so busy trying to expend their energy to help everyone around them that they're forgetting about themselves. And so a lot of our herbalist work has been sitting down with people and saying, "Hey, have you had a nap lately?
Have you eaten today?
Have you eaten? Have you drank water? Do you need some of this tea? Do you need to be warm for a little while?"
Yeah, because lots of people, they're so, I really can't tell you what it's like to see what we've seen, to literally, like Luke and I have witnessed our neighbors, our friends, getting taken, getting kidnapped, and the terror that can fill you with, especially when you're a parent. It's pretty palpable, and so it's been amazing to have elders and other people reminding us, take a moment, take a day, don't go out and do patrols today. Don't go out and make deliveries today, just stay home or do whatever you need to. Go out, take a walk in the woods. One of our friends went ice skating in the woods the other day, as her self-care day. So just reminding people to do that is so essential. And our elders have really been integral in that.
For you, what are some of the plants and practices that have been vital to you staying grounded and well for your community and for yourself?
So I think we use a lot of mint to help us, drinking mint teas. So some of our local mint, but also utilizing these breathe easy inhalers. Using a lot of hawthorn for ourselves, so as sort of like a heart tonic. So trying to keep our spirits up.
Yeah, we actually use a lot of things almost like we are grieving, right? So we use a lot of grief herbs like rose and like hawthorn. Rose is one of my best friends, and has really helped me through a lot of these times, and right now is no exception. I can't tell you all how many rose petals I've gone through in the last few weeks even. I'm very thankful for that. But like Luke said, so mint is a very important, Mentha arvensis in particular is very important for the community here, the native community in particular. And so we utilize a lot of that because we harvest it ourselves. We've been utilizing a lot of cedar, a lot of the artemisias that are native to here. We've been like in tea and also burning them. Nettles are another one of my favorites. I mention nettles all the time just because they're such a dear friend of mine. We've been a lot of that whole mint family too, like lemon balm and monarda, and I could go on and on. What else? Oh, no, I don't want to talk about that one. I don't want to encourage people to use there are certain plants I don't want to. Yeah.
Holy basil.
Yeah, we've been getting a lot of tulsi.
Lemon balm. Not for us personally, but that's been something that we've been making for community a lot, is like holy basil and lemon balm tea.
Yep.
Linden has been a big one.
Oh yeah, linden's been really big for us. Linden flower and the leaf as well.
What's your local species of rose?
We have Rosa woodsii here, and we have Arkansana here too.
Wow, beautiful.
Yeah, we love them.
Yeah, sounds like you are being well supported by lots of plant friends and also by lots of human friends. And I'm so glad you have each other and the larger community of plants and people that love you all and Minneapolis and the Twin Cities area. And I hope you know that you're being thought about and cared for. And it sounds like you're witnessing that on your friend's porch and with lots and lots of messages of care.
True. Yeah. And we love those messages too. All the packages of herbs always come with such a beautiful note, and we keep every single one of them. And, we, even from 10 years ago at Standing Rock, we still have, books of like notes and letters and drawings from people, and we love those. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking care of your community and holding that hard space over there right now. And thank you so much for sharing today with our listeners. And I'll share those links that you mentioned for Linda, your Facebook, Instagram, and your email. And anything else that you would like to share with our listeners before we close for today?
Just, I think I would just encourage everyone to stand up for their neighbors and to show love. And plants are a great way to do that.
Thank you all.
Beautiful. Thank you. Well, folks, thank you so much for listening to another round of Tea Talks with Jiling on Herbal Radio with Luke and Linda Black Elk through Mountain Rose Herbs. And this is your host, Jiling, signing off. Until next time, drink lots of tea, say hello to your plant friends, and be friends with your neighbors too. Take good care.